Hey guys, this is a Finnish round rye bread that I'll be making. I've been making this for about 28 years now and it came from my mother, so this is how I do it. You're going to need bread flour or regular all-purpose flour, yeast, dark or light rye flour, I'm using the dark, some salt, regular vinegar, and buttermilk. This recipe will be printed in the Show More box in full. The first thing that you want to do is warm your buttermilk. You don't want this on high, you don't want it on medium. Slow and low is your best option. You want to bring this to a lukewarm temperature, not a hot temperature. You don't want to walk away from this. This will curdle in a hurry. So when it comes up to a lukewarm temperature, set it aside. The next thing that you want to do is put your yeast into your bowl. Pour your buttermilk over it, give it a good stir, let it sit for a couple of minutes until it gets foamy. I put my rye flour in and give it a stir, then I go ahead and put the salt in and the vinegar and give it another stir. After that, I put my white flour in and mix it up the best I can in the bowl. Put all of your dough onto the counter, give it a good knead for about 7 to 10 minutes. Use extra white flour if you need it on your hands on the countertop. And then we're going to go ahead and put it into a greased bowl. I use extra virgin olive oil to grease my bowl. Normally I let my bread rise for about an hour. You're going to want to let this rise for about an hour and a half because there's no sugar in it. So the yeast has to work with the flour instead, so it takes a little bit longer to rise. Put a clean tea towel over it. Put it in a warm place, set your timer for an hour and a half, and let it do its magic. After the rise, I knead it for about 1 to 2 minutes, just enough to get the air out of it. Then I flatten it out and roll it to about a 1/2 inch thick, as close to a circle as I can get it. There's a really cool story about this bread. I've been making it this way as long as I can remember. This is how my mother always made it, and there was never any question about why we make it this way. This is just the way we do it. We put a hole in the center. The other day I asked Mom, why do we do that? Why do we put a hole in the center of this bread? It's not very often that you see holes in the middle of your bread. She said, well, that's very easy. Back generations ago, we're talking a long time ago, when they had large families and they pretty much always lived in one room or 2 rooms, and they had a wood fireplace, what they would do is make a lot of bread at once, but they never had any room to store it. They didn't have counter space or big pantries like we did, so they would cut a hole in the middle of the bread and put a stick through it, kind of like a broomstick, and they would hang it from the ceiling all in a row, horizontally, and that's how they would store this bread. I found it absolutely fascinating. All I can think of now is making a whole bunch of bread and hanging it from the ceiling with a stick just so I can know what it was like to store bread this way. But that's the reason that I finally found out the reason why we put the hole in the center. Even though we don't need it nowadays, we still make it the old-fashioned way. Okay, once you've taken the little hole out of the bread, I carefully transfer it to a baking sheet with parchment paper down. I don't grease it. I don't put any kind of cooking spray on it. And once I have it on the parchment paper and on the baking sheet, I give it another little roll with the rolling pin just to make sure that it's even. Then I go ahead and put little fork marks into the bread. And the same thing goes with the little centerpiece that you cut out. I cover that with a tea towel and I let it rise for about an hour in a warm place. When it's done the second rise, I take lukewarm water, just water, and I brush it all over the bread. I then put it in the oven at 375 for 25 minutes approximately. A good way to tell if it's finished is if you tap it and it sounds hollow, it's done. When it comes out of the oven, I just let it cool on a wire rack. This is how I serve this bread up in little triangles. I've never found anything in the store that quite compares to the taste of this bread. It's quite unique. It's a very moist bread, but it's also a very dense bread. Hopefully you'll enjoy this bread just as much as I do. If you're interested in organic baking and cooking, there's a channel on YouTube called UpLiftingHome, and I'll put that under the Show More box as well. She has wonderful recipes and baking craft ideas. Go over, please introduce yourself, say hello. I'm sure that you will find something there that you will absolutely love. Until next time, hey do.